All right. So at various times throughout these segments, I've talked about truth and the words that we use to categorize or classify truth, and how the result from using different words to describe the same thing is that we lose our understanding of their meaning over time, because we focus on that classification instead of the root truth. So I want to talk about, I want to run through an example of one of those things. We'll talk about the news. But to understand that, I want to, and to preface that example, I want to talk about CERN. I don't know if you know about CERN. It's a European scientific organization that right now is colliding particles at very high rates of speed to recreate the creation of an element. And the theory is that by understanding how an element is created, we will see the truth of that element as it presents to us now in its created form. Well, likewise, by the same token, when it comes to an idea, if we can recreate how an idea was formed, like man's idea of news, then we can understand the truth of how that idea presents to us now. Good. So let's go to news. Well, before there was TV, the internet, radio, telegraph, newspapers, books, right? Before there was even the written language, there was just the spoken language. And you had different communities. Undeniably, you would have different small communities, at least, of people who inhabited a particular area. And between those towns, in order for information of any type to spread, there was no courier pigeons, there was no mail service, there was, no radio even. A person had to travel and take that information and speak that information themselves. They'd have to go from one town to the next, to the next, to the next, in order to get that information out. Now, so way back when, from town to town, there really wasn't much opportunity to communicate this information unless the information was necessary. Necessary as in need to know. This is back in simpler times. People could not take, a significant amount of time off, because they couldn't drive there either, right? To go bring unnecessary information to another place. They had to spend their time dealing with their daily needs instead, of course. So, this promulgated news, as it was, we'll get to what that means, was on a need-to-know basis as opposed to a want-to-know. Truth in transmitting that information was implied, like I said, because the times were so rough but simple that lies had more of an immediate impact, and liars therefore suffered immediate consequences, as opposed to now, where because of all this confusion that we have going on in the dissemination and promulgation of truth, the impact of those lies are diffused and spread out amongst other lies, and the liar suffers no consequences. Or in other words, because times were simpler, there were less lies and less liars. And because of those less lies and less liars, there was less confusion. And because of the less confusion, there was more accountability. And because there was more accountability, there was less lies. And as there are less lies, there is more truth. So, so when news started, it had to be truth. Otherwise, no matter who reported it or how it was reported, it was the spreading of lies, which would have been dealt with immediately, and they would have been held accountable for that immediately. Now, it's the same thing. It's not news unless it's truth, because if it's not truth, then it's lies, and news isn't lies. News is only truth. What could be the truth? If it's a lie, you're spreading lies. You're not spreading news. In order to be news, it must be truth. So now you got one man going from town to town, and he's relaying the truth of what needs to be known. But since he's got a room for a little bit more information, he gets asked to relay more than that which needs to be known. He gets asked to relay that which people want to know. So now we started off with news as being the important truth, right? That which we need to know, important truth. And now it's become the important truth and unimportant truth, that which people need to know or want to know as opposed to need to know. It's important to know that the Germans are coming, right? We got to get out of town. That's important to know. That's news. That's how it starts off. Now, you can throw some extra news in there once you get the important stuff down. Who's wearing what, who's doing why, what and why, with who. As long as it's true, because it's not true, it's not news. But so it starts off as the important truths, and then now it turns into important plus unimportant truths. Then, somewhere along the way, these same guys made to carry information that people don't need and didn't know that they wanted until they got it, and then they wanted it. They don't need it, but they wanted it after they got it, and then they wanted some more. So they didn't know they wanted it until they heard it, but once they heard it, they liked it, and they wanted some more. So now news is not news, which started off to be just the important truth, has now turned into the important truth plus the unimportant truth that people wanted to know, and now the unimportant truth that they didn't know they wanted to know, and now they want some more. Okay. And so now we come to today. And today, when we say news, right? Today, when we say news, we don't automatically think that it's the truth. Because things have gotten so confused and so jumbled with the lies and the misdirection and which is the misdeeds of those who control. Things have gotten so confusing that we question even if it's labeled news, might be real news, might be fake news, because we don't know. And so today's news, if you will, is a massive collection of some important but many unimportant truths, as well as a frenzy of lies, which makes for the inability to discern important from unimportant. Now think about that for a second. Think about that and how that leaves a person, because it leaves a person feeling like they have so much news but very, very little truth. And they would prefer to have less information and more truth. But there's too much confusion in the whole system of information transfer for any piece to be reliable in discerning truth from lies. Unless, of course, there's one piece of truth and it does not carry with it the lies implicit in the system, then maybe there can be a little honesty for the people. But so now the news, while it is more plentiful than ever, is less trustworthy than ever because of the built-up collective efforts of those who control and disseminate the news, and because of their efforts of disseminating lies along with it. Lies like the shock and awe, lies like the bling, lies like anything that purports a piece of information or truth is more important to pay attention to than others, when there are so many others today that's beyond important for you to pay attention to. So, once again, let's take a look at news. The truth of news as it was formed as an idea, as the giving of truth that needed to be known, important truth. And then it became important truth plus unimportant truth people wanted to know. And then they added on unimportant truth that people didn't know they wanted to know. But now that they know it, they want some more. So, in reviewing the origins of news and the idea of news, what we discover is how far our current understanding of news is from the truth of what it and how it began, and the lost meaning of news for which it still stands. And when you understand this, you will see not only the mainstream media, but the entire system of media delivers a little news, a lot of propaganda, and absolute confusion. And this seems to be a trend not only in our domestic news, if you will, our United States news, but it seems to be a trend in our foreign news and our international news, particularly our European news. Well, that's unfair, because it seems to be a trend, and it is a trend everywhere, and it affects everybody, every man on this planet. And as such, if you have ears, you should listen to the truth about how you are manipulated, how you are not given truth, and how it is withheld from you, and the effects of that on you.